When you've been married long enough, silence starts speaking louder than any argument. That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was the slow ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I'd come home late from work, exhausted, hoping for a bit of warmth or at least a kind word. Instead, I found Olivia standing by the hallway, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me like a judge waiting for a confession. "You're sleeping in the guest room tonight," she said flatly. "Until you apologize." I blinked, still holding my briefcase. Apologize for what exactly? Her lips curled into that tight smile she used whenever she wanted to win a fight she hadn't even explained. "You know what you did, Ethan. I'm done repeating myself." That was her favorite sentence lately. You know what you did? I didn't. Not really. The last conversation we'd had was about dinner plans, and somehow, in the space of a few hours, I'd become the villain in a story I didn't even understand. I set my briefcase down gently, more for myself than for her. "I'm not sleeping in the guest room, Liv. I'm sleeping in our bed." Her eyebrows shot up, shocked by the calmness in my voice. "Excuse me? You heard me. If there's something we need to talk about, let's talk." But silent treatment and exile aren't part of the vows we made. For a moment, she just stared, waiting for me to fold the way I always had before. I didn't. That unsettled her more than shouting ever could. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air itself was waiting to see who would move first. She scoffed, turned on her heel, and disappeared into the bedroom, muttering something about me being impossible. I stood in the living room for a long time, trying to remember when exactly marriage turned into a series of power plays. We'd been together 8 years, and somewhere between mortgage payments and forgotten date nights, love had turned into leverage. When I finally entered the bedroom, she was already under the covers, back turned. The lamp on her side was still on, a signal, maybe, that she was awake enough to listen if I said the right thing. I didn't. Instead, I quietly took off my jacket, loosened my tie, and lay down beside her. No words, no explanations, just the quiet honesty of someone who's tired of earning permission to exist. She shifted, clearly annoyed. "I said the guest room, Ethan. And I said, I'm sleeping next to my wife," I replied softly. The calmness in my voice seemed to throw her off balance. She was used to guilt, apologies, flowers the next morning. But not this. Not me choosing silence that wasn't surrender, but peace. An hour later, she got up and left the room. I heard the guest room door shut. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if marriages break slowly or all at once. Maybe both. The next morning, the coffee pot was empty, her side of the bed untouched. She'd left early, probably to make a point. I poured myself a cup of instant coffee and sat by the window, watching the sunlight crawl across the kitchen floor. That's when the message came. "If you think you can ignore me and still stay here, you're wrong." I read it twice. No anger, just observation. Then I typed back one sentence that would change everything. "Olivia, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just done apologizing for things I didn't do." I put my phone down and took another sip. For the first time in months, the coffee didn't taste bitter. By evening, she came home with that same storm brewing in her eyes. But this time there was something else, uncertainty. Maybe even fear. The kind that appears when someone realizes the person they've controlled no longer plays by the same rules. She placed her bag down and said, "So that's how it's going to be?" I looked up at her and smiled faintly. "No, Olivia. This is how it's finally going to be." Olivia's expression froze somewhere between disbelief and anger. For years, she had built the rhythm of our relationship around my reactions. My need to fix, to apologize, to make peace. Now that I wasn't feeding that rhythm, she didn't know what to do with the silence that followed. She sat down across from me at the table, arms crossed. "You really think you're innocent in all this?" "In what, exactly?" I asked, keeping my tone even. She exhaled sharply, as if the details didn't matter anymore. "You've been distant, Ethan. Cold. You barely talk to me." I nodded slowly. "Maybe because every time I try, it turns into a test I can't pass." Her mouth opened to argue, but no words came out. For a moment, she looked almost human again, tired instead of angry, fragile instead of fierce. Then pride swept in and built the wall back up. "So this is who you are now?" she asked bitterly. "The husband who refuses to apologize?" "No," I said quietly. "The husband who's finally done apologizing for breathing wrong." That shut her up. The look on her face wasn't rage anymore. It was recognition. The slow realization that I had meant every word. We sat there in silence for several minutes. The only sound was the faint clink of my coffee cup against the table. "You've changed," she whispered finally. "I had to," I said, "because every time I tried to make you happy, I lost a little more of myself." She stared down at the table. Her fingers traced invisible patterns on the wood, like she was searching for a memory that could save us. I wanted to feel something, anger, sorrow, nostalgia, but what I felt was peace. That night, she didn't speak another word. She went to the guest room again and I didn't follow. The next morning, there was no breakfast waiting, no silent truce in the air, just emptiness. I went to work, stayed late, and when I came home, she wasn't there. A note sat on the counter. "If this is what you want, fine. I'll stay at my sister's until you come to your senses." There was no apology, no question, just a declaration. I folded the note neatly and placed it in the drawer where we used to keep love letters. Days passed, then a week. I didn't text. I didn't call. For once, I let the silence do the talking. By the 10th day, my phone buzzed. "Olivia, you really don't care, do you?" "Me, I care. I just won't compete for my own marriage anymore." There was no reply. That evening, I came home to find her car parked in the driveway. Inside, she was sitting on the couch, staring at the photos on the wall. Wedding day, our first vacation, the night we bought this house. "You weren't supposed to call my bluff," she said softly. "I wasn't supposed to live in fear of upsetting you," I replied. She nodded, tears forming. "I just wanted you to fight for me." I sighed. "Olivia, love isn't something you win by starting wars. You wanted control. I wanted peace. And somehow we both lost." She broke down then, quietly, not dramatically. Just a slow surrender, the kind that comes when pride finally runs out of air. I didn't move to comfort her. Not out of cruelty, but out of understanding. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is let someone feel the weight of what they've built. When she finally looked up, eyes red and tired, she asked, "Are we done?" I thought about it, really thought. About the nights filled with silence, the small humiliations, the endless apologies that never healed anything. "I think we've been done for a while," I said. "We just didn't want to admit it." She nodded slowly, wiped her eyes and stood. No shouting, no theatrics. Just a quiet ending between two people who had finally stopped pretending. When she left that night, I didn't chase her. I poured myself a drink, sat by the window, and listened to the rain tapping against the glass. For the first time in years, the house felt like mine again. Not because she was gone, but because I had stopped begging to belong in it. The next morning, I changed the bedsheets, brewed fresh coffee, and opened the curtains wide. The light hit the kitchen floor exactly the same way it had the morning after our wedding. Only this time, it didn't feel like a promise. Felt like freedom. Somewhere between her ultimatum and my calm reply, I realized something simple. Apologies mean nothing when they're used as chains. And sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop speaking altogether.